Hi guys, how you doing? Welcome to the second in this series of blogs on struggling with watercolour. Now, I need to make it very clear before we go any further in this series that I'm not trying to set myself up as some, guru of watercolour or whatever. Yeah, these are just my thoughts, and I'm trying to give them to you because I think they'll help you. They've helped me. Okay, I've certain ways of doing things. I use certain equipment. I paint a certain way because it works. It's very simple. It works. Okay, so anybody that's maybe feeling a little bit like I'm trying to set myself up as the king of watercolour, you're wrong. Quite simply. Okay, this is predominantly for people who need a little bit of help, who like the medium and would want to progress but are finding it really difficult, which, to be fair, a lot of people do. Okay, an awful lot, which is why I do workshops, basically, because there's always a market. Unfortunately, it's a difficult medium. Right, so anyway, that over. We'll try and make today's a little bit shorter and a little bit less ranty than the last one. I do apologise for that. However, that's just me. I say it as it is. If you want somebody that's going to be nice and tell you things that you've read in all the books, then go somewhere else. I'll say things and I'll back them up with reasons. Okay, there's a reason for everything I say. So if I do appear like I'm on a little bit of a rant sometimes, it's justified 9 times out of 10. Okay, right, today we're going to talk about equipment. Okay, now I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about this because I hold manufacturers responsible for 50% of the people who can't progress in watercolour. Okay, now that might sound like a strange thing to say. Let me explain. Right, when you're starting off in watercolour, 9 times out of 10 you'll go and buy a little kit. Okay, usually comes in a little plastic case, and in that plastic case you'll probably have 20 colours or more in some cases. You'll have some little mixing areas, little wells, and you'll have a brush. Okay, the brush will no doubt look like this. Now, the reason you can't see the bristles is because there's probably only 2 of them. Okay, I used to run an art supplies company, and let's just say these brushes unfortunately were one of the best sellers. Now, we had to sell them because that's business, unfortunately, but I loathed every time I packed one of these up. I really ruined the day, for the simple reason that I could see people struggling, that they're not going to go anywhere with this. Right, what you have to realise is think to what the medium is called. It's called watercolour. The key word being water. You need to add water to the colour to get it to do what it was designed to do. Okay? Sounds like common sense. Right, going back to the manufacturers and putting brushes like this in their sets, how much water realistically do you think that brush will hold? None is the correct answer. None. So how on earth do you think people are going to be able to get the watercolour to do its thing? They're not. So they give up. Okay? Because 50% won't bother trying to work a way around the problem. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age where everybody wants results quickly, and if they don't get them, they move on to something else. Unfortunately, but that's the way life is nowadays, and I disagree with it, but that's another story. Right, this is the brushes I use. Okay, now I use these brushes. This is a size 14 squirrel mop, okay, and this is 1.5 inches flat. Now these brushes will get used for approximately 80 to 90% of my paintings, regardless of what size the painting is. So whether it be something like this, which is quarter imperial size, which is, let me think, 15 by 11 inches or 38 by 28 centimeters, or whether it be a full size, full sheet painting, or even whether it's a miniature, you know, a little sort of 5 by 5 inch thing. It doesn't matter. I'll still use these brushes for 80 to 90% of that painting. Now, why? Very simple. 2 reasons. 1, you need water to make watercolour work. How much water do you think this will hold in comparison to this? Infinitely more. Yes. So do you think the watercolour will work better? Of course it will. So we don't need those, okay? If you're serious about giving this medium a go, get some decent brushes, okay? You don't need many. Manufacturers, again, will try and convince you that you need lots and lots of brushes. That's why they have sizes 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and blah 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 blah. You don't need all those, okay? You need a couple of decent sized brushes like this, and this is what I use predominantly. I have these 2 brushes. I also have a squirrel, I have a, a sword liner, and I have, I think this is a number 10 or a number 8, something like that, round, with a good point. This is a synthetic mix, this one. It's got a good point in it, okay? Now that's important. You need good points on your brushes, and they need to be able to hold a decent amount of water. Those 4 brushes, that's all you need. You don't need anything else, okay? Now, how much simpler is that? Rather than starting with a set that has a brush in it with 2 bristles and then progressing your way through the whole line before you find out, oh wait a minute, I've got 25 brushes here and I only use 3 of them. Save yourself some money, get it right from the start. But again, it's down to the way the manufacturers work. You know, what people are under the mistaken impression that art materials manufacturers are there to help you learn to paint. They're not. Take it from somebody that was in the business. They're not interested in helping you learn to paint. They want to sell you stuff. That's it. That's their prime directive. Sell you more stuff. Why do you think there's so many colours and ranges? Okay. Now I use Daniel Smith watercolours because I love them. However, the Daniel Smith range of paints, there's over 200 colours. 200. And they will tell you you need all of them. You know? You don't. You need half a dozen colours, if that. I have probably 20 complete. That's 20 in total in my box. Okay? And some of them I won't use. Generally speaking, for a painting I'll use maybe a mixture 3 or 4 colours for that one painting. The reason you do that is because it keeps it harmonious. Okay? If you use too many colours, that's where your paintings start becoming disjointed. So, back to the point. Art manufacturers are there to sell you stuff. They're not there to help you paint. Okay? So, take it from somebody who's done the thing where they bought all the equipment and more equipment and more equipment and more colours and so on and so on, and then ended up stripping it all back again and chucking off in the bin or giving it away. You don't need all that stuff, okay? So brushes, start off with a couple of good brushes, decent ones. The ones I use are from the Rosemary Brush Company. They're based in Yorkshire. They hand make everything, and I can't fault them. They're fantastic brushes. I've used them for years, and they're very reasonably priced as well, I might add. Take this one for example. Well, if you take, excuse me, if you take this two, I sell this set as £56 on my website if you want to have a look. I priced up what this one alone would cost from, shall we just say, another brand. You know, two of the well-known brands, and in both cases this one brush was over £100, well over £100. It's exactly the same brush, exactly the same, and they're mass made in China or wherever. Okay, these are handmade in Yorkshire and cost half the price or less. Now that's not because they're inferior quality. In my actually, to be honest, I think they're better quality. I've used brushes from all the manufacturers, and these are the best I have found. Okay, so if you want a good brush that's at a reasonable price, try Rosemary Brush Company. She only sells to artists. You can't buy them on Art Supply's websites. You need to go to her site direct. You can get those two on my website, but that's because that set was made up for me. Right, moving on, because we're getting a bit ranty again today, aren't we? Palettes. Right, in your beginner starter kit you'll have a little palette that has little wells in it where you mix your colour. Right, therein is another problem. Why? It's quite simply, if you mix up a little well of colour that is quite deep, you have absolutely no idea how strong that colour is. None whatsoever. Until you apply it to your paper. Then it is too late. Now that is why people have little pieces of paper next to their paintings usually. They have lots of little, little testers on. That's why they need that. Because they're using a palette that is not designed for the job. This is the palette I use. Okay? It's quite big. You can see that? Now, why? Very simple. If I just demonstrate. Two reasons. I can mix up a nice big sloshy wash of colour. Easily. And there's plenty of space. I don't have to worry about space. But secondly, if I just show you what I mean, I can mix up colour, and because I can do this on the palette, yeah, I can see exactly what colour is going to be when I apply it to the paper. It will be exactly the same, because this is a white palette. But also, I can see, just by doing this, how thick the painting is as well. The number one secret in watercolour is, wait for it, control of watercolour. Water. It's control of water. Once you learn how to control the amount of water in your brush and in your pigment to water ratio, once you learn how to control that, you've got it sussed. It all becomes easy after that, more or less. Okay, now with a big palette like this, I can see that that's quite a wet wash. Okay, and you determine that by how quickly the brush strokes disappear. So there you go, I've just done that so you can see what I mean. And that determines how thick the paint is. If I add a bit more pigment that is, the brush stroke will remain more defined for longer. You see what I'm getting at? Now, do you think you can do that in a little palette that has wells, little wells for mixing your colour? No, you can't. Quite simple. So do yourself a favour. Instead of going out, if you're just starting, instead of going out and buying one of those little watercolour sets, go out, get yourself some decent brushes, half a dozen colours. Yeah, no more, half a dozen. Two of each primary, a warm red, a cool red, a warm blue. You get the idea. And get yourself a decent palette. You can use a butcher's tray if you like, a butcher's tray or half a dozen saucers. But whatever you use, make sure it's got plenty space, so that you can determine how thick your paint is easily before you apply it to the paper, because that's where the secret is. Quite simply, it's controlling the water. So, to avoid things like runbacks, etc., you make sure that what you're putting onto the paper is less wet than what's there. It's that simple. So, that's why you should have a bigger palette. And like I say, you don't need to go out and spend a fortune on one of these fancy palettes. If you like, just use a butcher's tray or a couple of saucers. If you do want a big palette, a good one, you can buy them on my website. I'll put all the links for this stuff, you know, at the bottom of the video. I'm not here to sell you stuff. I'm just here to, like I say, just explain why I use certain things and how they make life easier. What you got to remember is the simpler you make the process from the start, the quicker you'll pick it up and the better you'll be. If you complicate things with all these other things like little tiny brushes and having to get around that, spending 6 months before you realise, oh wait a minute, I need a decent sized brush to do anything, and you spend time messing about with little palettes, and then, you know, trying to determine which of the 40 colours in your box you actually need, because some of these boxes are 40 colours. It's ridiculous. Right, the reason you should limit your colours is quite simply, in watercolour, pigments have different properties. Some pigments granulate. What that basically means is, depending on how much water you add to that particular pigment, it will separate out, the pigment will separate out and go into the indentations in the paper. That's called granulation. Some pigments will stain. You need to know those ones. Some pigments are transparent completely, and some are semi-opaque, some are opaque even. They all have different properties. You also need to know how they mix together. Okay, what does this blue do when you mix it with this red, and so on. The only way you're going to learn that stuff is by practicing, and to make it simpler for yourself, the less colours you have in your box, the more you will know about them. So, I mean, I have quite a few colours here. There's about 20, I think. I don't know. Yeah, 20-ish, maybe just under. And I have a couple of little iridescent colours that I add in now and again as well. I know what every single one of these colours does when you mix it with the other one. And I know which ones you shouldn't mix with the other ones. You know, etc, etc. I know which ones granulate. I know which ones are transparent and which ones are opaque. I know which ones I can use to get really good darks. I know which one will give me a really bright green, or, you know, a nice dash of colour, and so on and so on. And the only way you learn that is by practicing a lot. You know, there's no shortcuts in this medium. You have to practice. That's how you learn. But if I can take some of the, you know, the rubbish out of the way for you a little bit and help you get there a bit quicker, then, you know, by all means, that's what I'm here for. So, get to know your colours, you know. It's important. It'll help you progress a lot quicker. So I think that's probably it for today, actually. We don't want to go on too long. Like I say, it's been a little bit less ranty than the last one. I don't know what the next one will be about. Possibly paper or something like that. I've a few thoughts on paper. Again, the manufacturers are leading people up the path with certain things, but to find out about that, you'll have to watch next time, won't you? So that's it for now. Go off and do some painting. You know, you shouldn't be watching me. Just go and do some painting, practice. Happy painting, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.